Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines, and in this review I'm going to be looking at an Airbus A330-300 from China Eastern Airlines. It is registered B-5976 and the model is by Phoenix, though they're not keen to tell you that. And this is typical of releases that feature cartoon characters, especially if it's Disney, that nobody wants to tell you who's making the model because they don't want to get sued by Disney. So it comes in this actually rather exciting and nice box, which you can see has Buzz sitting on the front here with absolutely no suggestion of who's manufacturing it. On the rear side, equally nice. You've got all the main characters from the last Toy Story movie. And, you know, as you can see, it's a typical Phoenix style box, which kind of gives it away anyway, but even if that didn't give it away, then the mold certainly would do. Now, I don't usually review that many Phoenix models, and that's primarily because I don't buy that many Phoenix models, and that's primarily because I am not an enormous fan of Phoenix. Having said that, I've still got like 160 of them or something like that, and the A330 is one of the ones which I really am quite keen to buy. And this isn't a new model. This model was made a couple of years ago, but I just picked it up, and hey, since I don't buy many Phoenix, I thought I'd give it a review. So, as always with my videos, the review is going to take its form of 3 parts. The mold can get 10, the livery can get 10, and the printing and the quality control can get 10 for a maximum score of 30. So, let's have a look at this kind of colourful, cartoony A330. Now, of all the major manufacturers, Phoenix do the very least to actually make their molds good. They don't upgrade them very often. Quite a lot of their molds are a little bit obsolete. So I'm not a big fan of their 737s, especially not their 747s. But their A330s are actually really very nice, especially the 300 because it's got better horizontal stabilizers than the 200, i.e. they're actually the right size. So, this mold is actually a good mold. It's one of my favourite A330s. And the A330 is an area of intense competition in 400 scale. There are some really good molds out there. The best is probably the Panda mold. The NG mold is very good as well, and the Aero Classics. But the Phoenix holds itself reasonably well up against those, and it's certainly better than the Aviation 400 and better than the JC Wings Gemini. One of the things I like about it is it's got a nice nose, which is quite pointy. Some of the A330s have not really got the point. It's got a nice feel to the undercarriage. It's the right length, so it sits nicely at a good height. It's got a quite nice tight fit with the wing. I quite like the fact that the wing only joins across a portion of its length. It's got a really nice fuselage fairing here as well, which is quite unusual for Phoenix. Often their fairings are a bit slab-sided. It's got a good set of wings and a nice tail. There's very little to complain about with this mold. It displays really well against other A330s and competes, as well. Now, if I'm going to complain, and there's always something to complain about, it's probably the undercarriage. It's not bad, but you can see the main gear is kind of blocky, and certainly the shape of the main gear doors isn't quite right. They're too far up, I think, the gear legs. But, overall, this is a good mold. There's not a huge amount to complain about. Yeah, in detail, as I have done before, looked at detail of the A330s, you may lose a point here and there, but really it's a very good mold, and I think that a 9 is not unwarranted for this A330. It is probably my favourite Phoenix mold outside of the A380s, which don't really fit my collecting criteria very much. So, Phoenix are good for A330s. I certainly recommend them for this aircraft type. Though, there's a lot of competition and there's always a lot of choice, and the Panda and the NG models and the Aero Classics are all, equally good, if not better. So, definitely Phoenix A330s hitting the mark for me. I'm going to pop it onto the stand to have a look at the livery, because this is, as you can see, quite a complex livery. Now, I don't usually like kind of toy liveries. Having said that, I've got a kid, and Toy Story is one of the best children's movies sets, possibly one of the best franchises in history of movies, actually. The first 3 films are spectacular. So I can't be upset about having a Toy Story model. And China Eastern is a focus airline of mine. So I've probably already got 5 or 6 other China Eastern A330s. This one will fit right in. It's quite a cool scheme. You've got Buzz Lightyear going to infinity and beyond across the front here. You've also got Woody doing something over here. Looks like he's flying, God knows how. But nonetheless, it's quite a cool scheme. And obviously the whole point of the scheme is to advertise the Disney resort, which is in Shanghai, which you can see here on the back of the aircraft. In terms of the actual colours of the model, now Phoenix almost always produce their models a little bit lighter than other manufacturers, and in this case I think that makes a lot of sense. If you look at the actual aircraft here in this picture, you can see the blue is very light, and if I look at the actual model here, you can see equally, I'll put that at the back perhaps, that the model is also very light, and it actually, you know, fits the picture there quite well. So I don't have a problem with the colours. I think that the blue is good and it matches pretty much the pictures that I'm seeing. Perhaps the video here didn't really show that, but nonetheless, believe me, it does. It's a nice light sky blue and it works well. In terms of the characters, Phoenix have actually done a really good job here. Buzz the printing quality is lovely, and Buzz looks good, you know. He's got the colours in the right place, he's got really nice detailing. And the same with Woody. I have to say, I think the Woody looks a little bit weird, but he does look just like the one on the actual aircraft, so can't really moan too much about that. It all looks nice. There's a lot of good detail here. Now, I could moan. I can always moan. There's some slight deviation from the pictures that I'm seeing on the web here, but the deviation is very small. I mean, the deviation is like this. Right, you can see here that Woody's hand finishes above the door, or actually at the height of the door, but on the actual model it's above the door. I mean, is that worth losing a point for? Hey, I nitpick, but I don't perhaps nitpick that much. I'm not going to drop a point for that. I think that this is getting a really good score for the livery. I think this is one of the best Phoenix reproductions of a livery I've seen in a long time. Now, ironically, one of the things that perhaps is not right is the colour of the element they should be getting right every time, which is actually the red of the swallow on the tail, which is really dark actually for a Phoenix model, and darker certainly than I'm seeing in the pictures. So, you know, they've actually done the livery really well, but I think that it's the red's too dark on the tail for the swallow. I'll knock a point off. I'll knock a point off for that. So that's I think going to get a 9 overall, but really the reproduction of what is quite a hard livery is actually really good on this model. Okay, so the last scoring section looks at printing and quality control, and this is an area that Phoenix suck at. And one of the reasons I don't get that many Phoenix models, their printing is not as good as NG models. It is not as good as JC Wings. It is not as good as Gemini Jets. It's kind of more in the Aero Classics area, perhaps sometimes not even as good as that. Now, I'm not saying that the printing itself is bad. This model is obviously printed really nicely and there aren't any obvious mistakes or blurs or smudges, but it's just the amount of detail you see on Phoenix models is not comparable. You see there's almost nothing along here. The engines do have actually some decent printing on, but then you pull over the belly and it's always the belly which is the shower. Now, I know a lot of people don't care about the belly, but if you're not putting much effort in on the belly, then it kind of talks to the rest of the model. Now, one of the things that always entertains me with Phoenix models is that the main gear doors, when they're actually present, and they're not always, don't actually connect with the main gear. So that's a bit weird, and there's just not a lot of happening here. It's you know, it's just not quite as good. The other thing, and one of the issues that you do have to watch out for with Phoenix A330s especially, is the printing of the window line, which is usually too high. And again, on this model, it is too high, though it's not a grievous problem here. It's, you know, if you look at the model from the side, then you can see that Woody's hat is off over in, you know, the curve of the roof, and you can see there's quite a distance between the windows and the wing root. It's too much. If I look at the actual aircraft, then you can see that that should be lower. Woody's hat should be visible from the side in totality, and the window line should, be a bit lower. It's just a bit high. So it's not disastrous, but it's definitely too high, and that's a recurring issue with Phoenix A330s, unfortunately. So you just have to live with it, really, if you're buying these. So that's not great. So I'm going to knock a couple of marks off for the window height and for the fact that they just don't put the same amount of detail in as they probably ought to. In terms of quality of construction, though, Phoenix have actually done a pretty good job here. Usually Phoenix have tire tabs. This model actually doesn't have any tire tabs, which is really unusual. So that's nice to see. Can't complain about the tires because there are no tabs. And I think they put it together well. Another issue that sometimes you get with Phoenix A330s is at the wing root, and there's a big gap. And this model, there is not. They nestle nice and tight into the fuselage. So again, not a problem. So those are issues that often Phoenix models have, especially the A330s, but this one doesn't. So it's going to get an 8 overall for the printing and the quality control. So overall, Phoenix A330s are probably the most common Phoenix model in my collection, and in my opinion is one of their better molds. The 777s are good, but not as good as others. The A330 is the best, but they don't produce much on it. Most of the rest of their molds are weak in comparison to the competition. The A330 is not, and it's a good aircraft to be buying when you're buying Phoenix models. I had missed out on this release when it came out, which I think was 2018 maybe, and I'm really glad to be able to pick it up on the seconds market because it is a nicely put together model, and they've done a fine job at reproducing the livery. It just shows some of the minor issues that Phoenix A330s have in terms of the height of the window line, in terms of some relatively weak printing underneath. But overall, it's done well. It's got a decent score, which was 9 for the mold, which was 9 for livery, and 8 for the printing and quality, for a combined 26, which is pretty good by Phoenix standards. They quite often score in the low 20s when I review Phoenix models. So this one is a keeper. It's a nice model. I haven't got anything drastically against Phoenix, but you just got to be careful what you're buying and check that it actually looks like the real thing, which is what these reviews are all about. So hopefully you found this useful. Anyway, as always, if you like the reviews, please subscribe. Check out the website, Yesterday's Airlines. I talk a huge amount about models. I look in detail at the molds and try to get to the nub of the matter about who has the best and what they're doing with it. So please check that out, and thanks very much for watching. See you later.